I'm Greg Giuliano. I'm an executive coach, organizational change consultant, and author. I believe leaders have the power to shape the future and change people's lives. I also believe people who challenge the status quo and go beyond usual and ordinary are rare. They're willing to go to the edge and push farther, over and over again. When I find these ultra leaders, I love to talk with them. In each episode, I talk with ultra leaders to learn how they do what they do and how they keep growing as leaders. I promise you a full dose of ultra leadership from other ultra leaders just like you in every conversation. We're at the edge of another episode. Let's jump in. Welcome to another episode of Ultra Leadership. My guest today is Jason Wilcox. Jason is Chief Technology Officer at Source Advisors. He's a distinguished leader in the tech industry with a rich history in IT services, data analytics, software development, and information security. Beginning his career in IT and managed services, Jason quickly made a mark by growing a company from its inception to support nearly 2,000 users. His journey through the tech world includes pivotal roles such as Director of Data Services at LenderLive and Director of Technology at LCS Financial Services before leading as CTO at RefiJet and Head of Technology for GetJerry. A serial innovator, he founded and grew his own software company and has provided expert consulting across diverse sectors. Jason holds an undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering from Marquette University, 2 master's degrees. I feel the education could take the whole program. It's amazing. So 2 master's degrees in strategic intelligence and predictive analytics from Northwestern University, and an MBA from Quantic University. Jason's a family man, an avid landscape photographer, blending his passion for technology with his love for the natural world. I am really looking forward to today's conversation. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation too. This is great.
Man, look at what a story. There's so much there. But actually, I want to start on the hobby stuff or your passion and the photography piece, because when I think about the work of leadership, I think that there's some things about being a photographer, a mindset and some skills that are so transferable to your work as a leader. So tell me how being a photographer helps you as a leader.
Yeah. So, I think something that photography brings, which is really interesting, is there's a life cycle for a photographer, especially a landscape photographer. I remember, switching over to my first digital camera almost 25 years ago, and you no longer have film. So you have this kind of freedom, right? And so you revert to you'll take pictures of all sorts of stuff and you'll generate a ton of stuff, right? Everything's reactive, right? You see something, you take 50 pictures of it, you're throwing away 49 or maybe even 50. And as you evolve and mature, I think, as a photographer and get back into just your head about, okay, waiting for the light and knowing that, yes, I have the flexibility with these data cards. And man, these data cards, they've gotten so big now. But you get back to the point of, okay, I do have a skill set. I can rely on that skill set. I can proactively look of when is the weather coming, right? What is the light going to be? And really relying on those skills. So instead of going out to some place where you think it's maybe going to make a good picture and you're not thinking about all these ancillary components that affect it, right? The time of day, the weather, the season, the lighting, you get past all that, right? So, and that's part of the thing I like about landscape photography is when I go out and anywhere in Colorado, right, where I live, if I'm going to make a picture or I want to take a photograph, I am thinking about something that I've already thought about in my mind's eye. And then it's really looking at, okay, what time of season, what time of year, and proactively thinking about all these things so that I'm set up for the best chance of success. Right at the end of the day, things can go weird, but that happens. And I think about a picture I took several years ago. It was 3 years in the making. I knew it was going to be 3 years until the Milky Way was going to line up with the landscape that I wanted. And you have to wait it out, right? Landscape's not going to change for you. And I think what's interesting is, pivoting over to technology a little bit, is that is true about technology as well. Startups, small companies, they're really scrappy. You're reactive. You're just trying to get stuff done as fast as you can. Even for people who have a background in tech or IT, you're just trying to do things. And then as that team grows and as that company grows, you kind of go back to remembering, oh yes, I have expertise, I have a skill set. I can think proactively about these different problems that whatever company you're with is trying to solve, right? What those solutions look like. So, yeah, I think there's definitely a corollary between the photography, which is certainly fun. I wish I were good enough to pay the bills, and IT, where I've kind of cut my chops for almost 30 years now.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. Asking about your hobby as a photographer, and you touched on it, the shifting from being reactive to being more proactive. And part of and correct me if I'm wrong, but the part of the mindset that, or and the skills that a leader would need in order to be less reactive and more proactive are things that probably help with photography, of being patient, right? So planning out, this is the date in the star calendar that it will be everything lines up, right? The Milky Way will be where I want it to be. The weather's going to be. So that's patience. And so leadership, you have to develop some kind of patience and being very observant of the environment and laying things out. And so I'm curious about, when you think about leading your team or leading your organization, what does being proactive look like in day-to-day practice of working with other human beings and getting them to do things in the most effective way possible?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when it comes to IT and technology, at the tactical sense, they're very different than, say, other lines of business, other departments. But anyone in a leadership role is very similar to whether you're in HR or sales, right? You are now in the business of cultivating human beings, right? You are trying to improve behaviors, you are building culture. You're doing all these things that at the end of the day have nothing to do with technology. And you have to think about it proactively, because if you want your team, your culture to be something that your employees rave about, right? Or your team loves to talk about, or someone wants to investigate and understand how you did it. It's not a day two thing, right? You don't start it on day one and on day two, you're checking off some check mark like you can do with a lot of technology pieces. It's something that you're putting in huge amount of hours to really build up that culture and those components. You have to be proactive about it, right? You have to, in your mind's eye, say in a year, I want the culture to look like this. I want the behaviors to look like this. And I know with people, right? People grow and evolve, and they need time to build up those skill sets.
Yeah, and it's not just a cross your fingers, that, because
No,
any tech transformation also includes a people transformation component to it, which is a
that's right.
heavier lift, right? Most of the time,
Huge.
right? It's the bigger piece, and it's not just a cross your fingers thing. So, when you think about just your team and helping your team not just navigate changes, hey, we're going to change this, but also to lead other people through that. What are the skills that you're hoping that you are developed, that you are seeing your team lean into and develop in order to be better at navigating change and leading the rest of the organization through change?
Yeah, the nice thing is over the years I've been blessed with some amazing technology teams, right? People who are very good with technology, very tactically and technically abled. So a lot of my time and my development has been spent on developing the softer skills that people need to really be successful, right? Because it's very easy for someone who loves to work on servers to go work on a server. But for that person to be able to communicate with other stakeholders, right? If they're trying to explain a problem that's happening or a change that they want to make. They have to be able to rely on communication, storytelling, empathy, some of these different areas that sometimes for people in technology can be a little scary. But I really like what you said about just knowing kind of the destination, right, of where you're going. It's something that if I'm able to communicate that to my team in an effective way of saying, look, we're here and we're at square A, we want to get to square Z. Well, I need to be able to explain what square Z looks like, right? They have to be able to envision it in their mind's eye as well. And if they can do that, it's a lot easier then to identify the stepping stones that are going to get us there versus I think leaders sometimes struggle if they're not able to communicate what that end goal looks like, right? And so they are maybe very good at these stepping stones, but the destination is not aligned with the rest of their team. And conversely, I think you have some leaders who are very good at identifying what that destination is, but then they're not able to come down to the level of those stepping stones and say, look, if we want to get from A to Z, we have several steps that we have to take, and here's what each of those steps looks like, and here's what good looks like.
The way that you're describing that is truly back to helping your team be more proactive in engaging
Correct.
all of the folks that this is going to impact. And the challenge in that I'm hearing is that at any moment, because you're trying to help people understand what's changing and why it's changing and how their world is going to be different now and what's going to be expected of them, and then they get emotionally triggered, and then they might say or do something that pokes somebody on your team or you in the eye, right? They
That's
take
right.
it out on you, and it's be easy for you to get very reactive in those moments. That if I meet resistance, I could get reactive. So how do you and your team stay in that open space, with folks when they get reactive and rigid, and you're just encountering resistance at every turn?
Yeah, for me, I think I'm most successful when I treat it as an education piece, right? So knowing that if you're going to educate, right? I have 4 kids, so I've educated a ton of different subjects, and I'm very well informed now, 4 kids later, that when you do something or you teach something to say your oldest, and then you go and do it 3 more times, it looks different every time, right? Some people get certain things really quick, and other times they fail. And those are okay, right? Failure is okay. That's true with the teams that I try to lead as well. I can think of a recent example where we're trying to attack IT support in a proactive and empathetic way. And we had, a line of business person who had the situation come up, and to them, it was a 911, right? And what they really wanted was somebody to do something, right? I said, do something, and the IT team is a work in progress, right? And so while we should have handled it proactively, we collectively as a group, everybody handled it reactively, right?
Right.
And so it's just going to the team and saying, "Hey, here's the situation. Here's what we did, and it looks like what we used to do. In the future, here's how it should look like." Now, the beauty is there's an opportunity, there's a grace in there to fail, right? It's never going to be perfect the first time. But knowing that they have that room to explore and that room to look at things and say, okay, I tried it this way. Oh, I hit it nail on the head. I've taken a step forward. I tried it this way. It didn't quite work. I've taken a step back. Those forwards and backs are okay as long as over the long term, you're making that forward momentum.
Yeah, so that's really interesting to me too, that the learner's mindset that you bring to your work, right? So a lot of times people they aspire to your role, to be at your level in an organization, and what gets them invited to sit at the table is that they know a lot,
Yes.
and they can show up with that knower's mindset, and they get fixed, right? I'm here because I know stuff and I have to demonstrate that I know stuff. what you're saying is actually counter to that, that you need to have that learner's mindset. And that's part of not being proactive versus reactive. I think that, I need to learn, right? So back to the photography. What is the environment telling me? What is this other person who's screaming 911? What's going on with them, so that I'm a learner? I want to learn what's going on with this person so that I'm not just reactive, that I can engage with them in a less emotionally charged, more proactive way.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. You've brought up a subject that you do something, you succeed in something, and then you get moved into position, right? Management or leadership that is so different than the tactical execution. And I think that's where people differentiate themselves. If you can come into that new position knowing that you have skill sets that got you here and they're going to help you in a leadership role, but that you have to have an open mind to all sorts of things that are going to happen that you're not experienced with, that you haven't gone through before. And if you can get to the point where you realize the people who've put me in a leadership position are not expecting me to know everything, they're expecting me to be able to lead. Right. And truth be told, that is something that when I first moved into like a management leadership role, it was something that it took me a little while to learn to be comfortable to ask questions. And I think some of the best, especially C-levels, they really distinguish themselves when they can ask really good questions. And it's not because they don't trust their team, it's not because they don't have faith in their team being able to execute, but it really comes from a place of saying, I don't know, I don't understand, and I'm looking to said team member to educate me, right? And but that should happen all the way down the line. But to your point, right? Someone who is a support specialist or their system administrator, they've really cut their teeth on tactical execution and very good tactical execution. And then you get taken from a sysadmin to maybe a department lead or director of IT. And you can talk the talk that your team is doing, but what they need from you is just a completely different skill set.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you creating the conditions for them to succeed? And that's not by telling them
Yes.
what to do. It's
Correct.
asking those questions and drawing it out of them.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh, man, I love it. So, in theory, this is all great, right? So, we need to be proactive, not reactive. We need to use empathy as we're leading. We need to ask great questions. We need to have that learner's mindset. As you're trying to do this every day,
Yeah.
day in, day out, how do you get in your own way? What's the thing? So, I mean, you're awesome, but I want to, none of us are perfect. So, what's the thing that, oh, I wish I just didn't do this anymore, but I still do it? What's that habit or that behavior that, man, this is how I get in my own way, and I need to remind myself of it all the time? Because probably there are lots of other people listening. They do the same thing.
Yeah. The good news is I get in my way all the time. So plenty of examples to pull from. I'd say the biggest area that it happens for me is, and I think this is true for any person who comes from a specific discipline and then goes on to lead that discipline, is I have talked the talk and walked the walk from a technical standpoint, right? So while the day in, day out, there's not an expectation for me to be tactically in the weeds, it's very easy for me to fall back into that position, right? And I'm very comfortable there. That's where I started. I was an engineer. I was an analyst, right? I've done all these things. And so there are times where if I am not practicing what I'm preaching, I start thinking about deadlines, right? And I start to get reactive, or I start thinking about, man, I just need this thing done, right? And so I'll step in and just do it myself. When I do that, I'm not giving my team the opportunity to succeed or fail in that space that I've provided for them, right?
Right.
I've said, here's the space, go do it. And then maybe I'm having a bad day. Maybe I'm feeling the pressures of things piling up. And all of a sudden I react and I go tactical. And yeah, something tactical may get done, but in the grand scheme, we're actually moving backwards.
Yeah. That reactivity. So you're not alone in that, right? I coach lots of leaders that
Yeah.
it's their anxiety that, oh, shoot, something just happened, right? That, the CEO just called me on fire about something. And I decide that the best thing is I'll just do it. And then I'm disempowering somebody on my team because I just want the CEO to just get off my back, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to stay proactive and grounded in those moments helps you cut into that habit. I appreciate you sharing that because you're not alone in that. Lots and lots of leaders deal with that. And that's just, being able to manage our emotions in those moments so that we can stay in that proactive space.
Yeah.
Because whenever we get reactive, something bad's going to happen. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, I think that's true. And again, it's not to say, as a leader yourself, right? As a leader myself, there are things that come up that you react to, right? That have a reactive capacity. In technology, cybersecurity is a great one, right?
Right.
But what's interesting about that is that if you take a step back, you're reacting to a situation in, say, a cyber incident, but if you've done it correctly, a full amount of proactive work that allows you to be reactive in a very positive way, right? It's when you don't put in the homework ahead of time,
right,
or you don't allow for that space and you just go into reactive Hulk mode, right? That's when you kind of go off the rails.
Yeah, it's true. You're getting to the place where you trust we know what to do, right?
That's
So
right.
we're not running around with our hair on fire when something urgent and important happens. We go, oh yeah, that just happened. Okay, we know what to do. Everybody
Yeah.
breathe. We know what to do.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think it's the difference between urgency and haste. I
Yeah.
think working with a sense of urgency is very impactful to an organization. I think there are a lot of people out there that work with a sense of haste, which is in this world, I think more of the negative connotation, right? Of trying to do things really fast, not being strategic, not being proactive about it.
Yeah. Man, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of this. There's so many nuggets of gold that you've dropped in this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to you. I always like to end with moments of gratitude because it's good for our brains to give and receive gratitude. So I'm grateful for you being here today. What's something in the world that you're grateful for as we sit here today?
Well, I will tell you, and it relates back to what we talked to. I'm very upfront that when I first started out in technology, I can't say that I had a great soft skill set. I was very tactical and very accomplished as a tactical worker. But thankfully, I met an amazing woman who became my wife, and I've had some amazing kids. And they have such a strong soft skill set, that between her and them, that's really helped me develop that side of my personality and that side of my business that, makes me successful today. And hopefully I'm able to impart that on others. So I am grateful to my wife, Gina, and all my kids, Maya, Zatanna, Zoella, and Zion.
Right on. Well, thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you for listening in. We appreciate your comments about the program. And so spread the word. Let's get other folks listening in to Ultra Leadership. And until next time, keep pushing things, go to the edge and push a little farther and enjoy the journey. So thanks again for listening. This has been Ultra Leadership. We'll see you next time. If you're enjoying Ultra Leadership, please take a minute and give us a review wherever you find your podcasts. And please stay in touch. Sign up for our Ultra Leadership newsletter at ultraleadership.com. Now, before you jump to your next meeting, I invite you to reflect on what you heard today. What stood out for you? What insight might you want to incorporate into your leadership practice? Until next time, remember, as a leader, you always have the power to shape the future and change lives. So go to the edge and push farther. Thanks for listening.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.